It is time again for the weekly Born to Lead broadcast, and this is me, Shedrack Baku, even as I welcome you to today's time or today's session. And today we're going to be talking about developing the right mindset. Now, it will interest you to note that the mind is the most beautiful, most advanced creation of God, and it is also perhaps the most dangerous feature in the entire human being. All right? Because with the heart, with the mind, you can both develop things and yet destroy things. So, you're welcome to today's session, and we're going to be discussing developing the right mindset. Now, you may be wondering what the mind is. So I'll make an effort to try to break it down for us to understand. We have the mind as a thinking faculty, as the production house within the human being, as the director, the faculty that directs the entire activity of human beings. That's how complicated the mind is. It is so complicated that if you are not careful, you will simply destroy yourself by the way that you use the mind. Now, it is also the freest agent that God has ever created. It is so free that even God, the Creator, does not twist it, does not force it into doing things. And I know that the mind is so tricky that even you who has the mind cannot fully understand what the mind is. So that's an insight as to what the mind of the human is and how we can understand the mind. And unless you understand what the mind is, unless you understand what your mind is, you will not be able to control your mind. And if you are not able to control your mind will control you, because actually the mind is the hub, the center where every character, every attitude, every response of the human comes from. All right? The reason why two persons will encounter the same event and yet have different responses is because both minds have stored up certain information, have made up certain decisions that will enable the mind, or that would enable the person respond to those situations. So you must know that out of the abundance of the heart, again, the mind is called the heart because, again, the mind can be divided into two: the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is what we call the heart because it operates without need for any consciousness, without need for any long thought. Actually, it operates based on the things that have been stored up within, that have been safely kept within. And those things are safely kept by the events that we have encountered in life, by the experiences that we have had in life. So the mind is the freest agent that God created. It is so free that even God himself does not make an effort to change it. Okay? It is also the most complicated creation because depending on what is stored up, it can be happy today and sad tomorrow. Or in fact, it can be happy in 1 minute and be sad in the very next minute. That's how complicated the mind is. The mind also, in explaining this complication, can actually operate 10 quadrillion operations within a second. Quadrillion is a number that has 12 zeros behind. 12 zeros behind. And the mind is so complicated, it's such a complicated unit that within a second, it can operate in 10 quadrillion times operations within that same mind. The mind can also do 6 trillion things to the 60 trillion cells that are found within the human body. Not even a computer can do that. So you must know that that complication, that sophistication is something that the mind can carry out. So if that is how complicated the mind is, if that is how complicated your heart is, then it means that there are certain things that you can do to properly guide your mind, to have a proper mindset, to direct your actions, to direct your responses, to direct your attitude, okay, in a particular dimension. Now, let me share this example. Today, in today's Nigeria, there is so much cry about insecurity. There's so much cry about kidnap and so on and so forth. The Abuja-Kaduna road, for those who know the road, is one of the complicated areas where people easily get kidnapped. But you see, regardless of that, I know of 2 persons who travel that road weekly. In fact, 3 who travel that road in spite of the availability of alternative transportation, okay, whether by train or airplane. There are people who drive on that road. I know 3 men who drive individually on that road nearly every weekend. And there is hardly anything you can do to convince them that the road is too dangerous for them. But again, I know of someone whose in-laws are in that town and lives in Abuja, and there is nothing you can pay that person to follow that road. Now, both of them are right. But both of them are right depending on their mindset. One believes that there is no danger that can overtake him on that road. But the other believes that as soon as he steps on that road, he will be kidnapped or killed. So he doesn't follow that road. He won't travel that road for anything. Now, it isn't the circumstance, it isn't the situation that determines whether they should travel or not. It is the mindset that they have that has determined their ability to travel or not to travel on that road. It's their mindset. And so if your mindset is such that it tells you that there is danger along the road, you will not leave your house, you will not do anything. But if your mindset is such that it is positioned that in spite of danger on the road, you are able to succeed. There are so many people who have that mindset and they continue to succeed regardless of the situation and circumstance that has attacked them. A few months ago, there was a fire outrage somewhere close to my house that burnt or razed down an entire market. And in that market, we had members of our church, people that we know and recognize or realize to have stalls in that market. Now, I interacted with a few of them. One was particularly grateful that that happened because it was going to be an opportunity to start afresh. The other was bitter that everything that she had in that market was consumed. Now, it isn't the fire that burnt the market that was the issue. It was their mindset interpreting the fire and interpreting the situation and circumstances that had taken place. So, it isn't your circumstance, it isn't your situation that determines how you respond. It is what is in your mindset that determines how you respond to the situations and the circumstances around you. You may have heard of the placebo effect. The placebo effect was a research conducted where a number of sick persons having the same ailment were broken into two groups. One group was given drugs for treating that disease. The other group was given sugar capsules, so to speak, capsules that were broken. This was just sugar that was made to look like tablets and was given to the other set of people with the same sickness as the first group. Now, it was discovered that while one group was taking the drugs for the medicine for the sickness, the other group was taking the sugar capsules for the sickness. But both thought that they were taking the same drugs for the same sickness. It was discovered over time that both groups became well at about the same time. Why? Because the research indicated that people's mindset was what determined whether they were going to get well or not. Whether they were going to come out of the sickness or not, that was determined by the mindset. It wasn't because of the tablet, it wasn't because of the drug that they took, it was because of the mindset that they had. And of course, on the other hand, is the nocebo effect, where the opposite thing happens, where people become sick because of their mindset. Once they are told you took a particular fruit that has been laced with poison, if your mindset fears poison, then you would instantly become sick, whether there was poison in that fruit or not. The nocebo effect. Why? Because your mindset has a great deal in doing with how in determining how you react to situations and circumstances. So, in today's session, what we will want to do is to give us tips on how to have the right mindset. How to have the right mindset so that you do not get destroyed, so that you see things from the positive perspective, so that you are able to overcome every situation and circumstance that comes your way, so that you are able to tell yourself that though I feel sick, yet this sickness is not unto death. And for you to do so, there are a number of tips that I will give, about 7 in number, and I will run through them because I intend that this broadcast be very brief and short. And I'm doing this because, you see, there is a link between your mind and your actions. There is a link between how you behave and what you have stored up in your heart. Because your mind controls your entire being. Your body does what your mind would want it to do. And your mind will do what has been stored up, the information that has been given to it to do. These are the principles for developing the right mindset. Number 1 is for you to guard your heart with all diligence, to protect your heart. And by protecting your heart, I mean to determine what goes into your heart, what comes into your mind, what settles into your mind. Do not allow just every junk to come into your heart. You know the computer language that says garbage in, garbage out. So if you store up garbage in your heart, garbage is what you will produce. The reason why you are unable to do things differently from what you are doing, even though the other things that you want to do are more preferable, is because they are not stored up in your heart. You produce what has been stored up in your heart. And it is said from research that unless you watch a movie or read a book or tell your heart something 7 times, that thing will not be registered in your heart. So if you want to change your habits, you've got to speak to your heart another habit at least 7 times. And sometimes it takes much more, depending on what has been buried in your heart. Unless you repeatedly tell yourself that, you may not be able to change your lifestyle. You may not be able to change your character. So guard your heart diligently, because from within the heart comes the issues of life. The second is that you need to purify your heart or circumcise your heart, depending on how you see it. And to purify your heart means that daily you've got to take things that are pure and read them and say them to your heart. What are the kind of books that you read? What are the kind of movies that you watch? And by the way, our children are gradually being formed into monsters, even by the supposed innocent cartoons that they watch. Growing up, Sesame Street used to be the best program, and it was very educative. It was about intelligence. We came to a time when Ben 10 was the reigning cartoon, and children loved Ben 10 until parents began to decipher that even though it looked innocent, it was actually sowing something in the heart and life of our children. And some of us had to do some purging for our kids. And that's what we need to do. Even for us as adults, we need to begin to read pure things. The reason why I do not listen to the news anymore because I've discovered that news are usually negative. Negative news sells the more. And I don't want to be negative. So purify your heart. That is the second principle. The third is that you need to renew your mind. How do you renew your mind? Stop going to places where your mind gets poisoned. Stop listening to people that poison your heart. You need to cut off from certain friends, people that have sown poison in your heart. You need to cut off from them. You need to in time past. And by the way, the eyes and the ears are the windows to your heart. What you see, what you hear, what you read are the things that store up in your heart. And when it is time for reaction, these are the things that will spew out of your heart. So you need to renew your mind. The fourth is that you need to watch what you watch. Determine from today what you will listen to, what you will watch. I listened to a lot of music when I was much younger. And so these days, even on radio, when they play old school vibes, I just find myself singing those songs unconsciously. Why? Because it is recorded in my heart. And that's the thing about subconsciousness. It just stores it up. You don't even know it is stored up until a circumstance and a situation that requires it to play itself plays out. Then you just discover yourself performing with regards to what has been stored up in your heart and your mind. And so to counter the music that I had listened to when I was much younger, and by the way, I was so good at music that I listened to BBC, I listened to VOA, to listen to latest tracks, so I could be the first to tell my friends about the latest music in town. Whenever friends argued and couldn't agree on anything concerning a musician or music, they came to me for a solution. That was how good I was when I was much younger. And of course, eventually, I've had to change music by listening to other kinds of music to renew my mind and to focus what I've been watching or listening to. There are certain programs on TV I do not watch because they are corruptive in nature. The fifth is for you to focus your mind on positives. The world is negatively wired. When you do a positive thing, there are people who look for the negative within the positive that you've done so they can sell it out. The world is negatively wired. Unless you are conscious about the need to be positive, you will end up being negative in life. And of course, when I used to work as a public servant, we had this negative-prone lady who was so negative at everything. So there was a day staff had a form of silent protest, needed new equipment, and new computers were bought and were brought to the office. And when these computers were being offloaded, well, removed from their boxes and being mounted, this lady came in and said, just hissed. And when someone asked, she said, well, these are refurbished computers. They are not new computers. We saw them. We knew they were new. Some of them needed coupling to be able to even function properly. Yet this lady just simply said that these were negative, or made a negative comment to say these were refurbished computers. Why? Because she has a negative mindset. And for you to be positive, you've got to draw close to positive things. The next principle is for you not to harden your heart, not to close your heart from new positive information, new progressive information. In this part of the world, particularly in this part of this country, there are certain people who think that if you are not in civil service, then you are not working. If you attempt to do business, they laugh at you. They think that life begins and ends with civil service. So they close their hearts when you make suggestions to them about the need to do other things other than civil service. They shut down. Learn not to harden your heart. Accept new information, but be sure that these are positive information. You see, the reason why people are kicking against the COVID vaccine, for example, is because a lot of them have hardened their hearts. They have been told that the end of the world begins by taking a COVID vaccination. Last Sunday in church, it was announced that vaccinators will come to the church and dole out COVID shots. Already some people began to hiss because they've closed and shut their hearts. They've hardened their hearts because they think that the COVID vaccination is the end of the world. And I was sitting next to someone who was making a negative comment. And I said, excuse me, were you giving the polio vaccine? He said, yes. Were you giving the measles vaccine? He said, yes. I said, why didn't you protest them then? He said, well, because he was a little boy when those vaccines were given. And I said, do they have any negative effect against you right now? He says, no. So I said, what is your grudge against the COVID vaccine? And he began to explain certain things, and I laughed. And I said, the world will not end because of COVID. It will not even end because of COVID vaccine. Why? Because that person has hardened his heart and will not take in new information. And finally, which is even my best, is to let your creator rule over your heart. You see, The heart of man is desperately wicked and deceptive. Even you who has the heart cannot understand the heart. You cannot. Because your mind tells you are forgiving somebody, but that's a deceit. Because anytime you see the person, you are angry against the person. And you go home telling yourself you've forgiven the person. Actually, it is your mind playing tricks on you. And by the way, that last line is the wording of a song I listened to many years ago. You see how easy it just comes to mind. Because then I used to sing that song and rap the song as it were. Your mind playing tricks on you. So you must understand that your heart is deceptive. And when I say the heart, I mean the subconscious mind of the human is deceptive. And only your creator, God Almighty, can know your heart and determine what is in your heart. There was a king in olden days Israel called David, who asked God, his creator, to search his heart and reveal it to him, that he may know if there are any deceptions within. Each one of us must do that. And as I round up, appreciating you for being a part and parcel of today's lesson, let me just say again that you need to guard your heart. You need to protect your heart. Determine what comes in and what goes out, because out of the abundance that you have stored up in your heart is how you are going to respond to situations and circumstances that come your way. Your mind is what determines how you will behave and how you would act. Thank you for your time. I would come to the end of this lesson at this time and to say, please be online on Friday at 12 noon so we can also interact on other aspects of leadership that I think that you need to concentrate on. You've been a blessing watching. You've been a blessing listening to me. See you on Friday, even as I come up with a new lesson for every one of us to understand. Have a blessed day and enjoy yourself. And thank you, by the way, for the comments that are coming in. And this is from Balogun Olorun Leke. Thank you, Leke, for your time. Do have a blessed week ahead of you. Bye-bye.